Nope.
We need to start with roll call.
Oh, sorry. I'm misreading this. Apologies. Roll call. I'm looking at the first page and thinking it's the beginning. Sorry. Roll call, of course. Commissioner Shen,
Present.
Commissioner Miyagi,
Here.
and Chair Taylor here. Okay, now we have agenda changes, additions, and deletions.
We have none.
Okay, now it's time for public comment. Do we have any?
We have no attendees present in the
Okay.
room.
Okay, next we have approval of minutes from January 19th.
So moved. Commissioner
And-
Miyagi.
And I'll second. And roll call, Commissioner Shen,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
Yes.
and Chair Taylor, yes. City official comments.
Wonderful. I have a couple of announcements. So Friday, February 24th at 4 p.m. on King Plaza, we will be having a celebration with artist Reyes Magos and many of the participants who interviewed and spent time with him as he developed the artwork, which is now on King Plaza, expected to stay through the end of September. So I hope everyone will come join us. And I think we're going to have a little live music, a little different than the DJ that's out there now. The other announcement is that the city has several openings for multiple boards and commissions, and they're actively recruiting through February 28th. And that's it.
Thank you. Can I just ask a quick question about Braille's piece? I couldn't tell, but is there lighting inside or around it? It's hard to, I didn't.
Not yet.
Okay, but will there be? Because that'd be, okay, great. I think it looks fantastic. So I'm really pleased with the process. So congrats. Action items. First, we have the adoption of resolution of COVID-19. I will motion for adoption of resolution authorizing
Second.
the teleconferencing.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. And roll call, Commissioner Shen,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
Yes.
and Chair Taylor, yes. Okay, next, remote meeting attendance policy. And we have a lovely guest, City Attorney Tim Shimizu, who's going to present. So thank you.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners of the Public Art Commission. My name is Tim Shimizu. I'm an Assistant City Attorney here in the city of Palo Alto. And tonight I have a brief training on changes to the Brown Act and so attendance to this body going forward. So we're going to have a slide deck and we can go 2 slides forward. Okay. So California's state of emergency related to COVID-19 will end on February 28th, 2023. So the end of this month. And with the end of the COVID state of emergency, Brown Act changes under the state of emergency. Well, the Brown Act changed under the state of emergency and it allowed basically the kind of virtual meeting that you're now used to for the past few years. But going forward, so starting on March 1st, so just in a week and a half, in-person attendance will become the default rule. So just to be clear, in-person attendance is going to be the default rule starting on March 1st for all Brown Act bodies, including this one. And so use of remote attendance will be much more limited compared to what it is today. So next slide. So in this presentation, I'm going to explain how members of this commission can still do remote attendance starting on March 1st. And so there are basically 2 ways. The first is what is called standard remote attendance. That's my word, standard. And that's the rules that existed before COVID, which are still around. And the second way is what's called AB 2449 remote attendance, which in my words is I'm sick and I need to attend remotely. So I'll explain those 2 today. So standard remote attendance. So these are the rules that existed before COVID. And so it's important to remember these rules existed before COVID, which is why they're the way they are. And this is not these rules are not trying to respond to COVID. They were made before COVID. So just keep that in mind. So standard remote attendance, the principle is that you can attend remotely if you make wherever you are basically into a satellite public meeting space. And that means posting the address of where you are on the agenda. It means allowing the public into wherever you are to watch and participate. It also means posting the agenda wherever you are. And you have to let anyone enter again and participate. And participate means watch and also speak during the appropriate times. So with all of that in mind, so here's an example of what a council agenda looks like. And you can see how it says the vice mayor will participate from this hotel in New Jersey. And so that's a real example from right as like, I think that was like literally the week before COVID started. Okay, so just some, before I get into this slide, just some thoughts on how that works, standard remote attendance, is that number one, you have to know in advance that you're going to do that because it has to be put on the agenda. So you have to know well in advance prior to agenda publishing that you're going to be remote. Second, it also means you can't be moving when you're attending remotely. Like you can't be in a car or like on an airplane, you know, even if that's technologically possible, because in theory, you're in a fixed place that, you know, the public can come to. It also means if you're, say, in a hotel room or something like that, you either have to let people in your room or go to somewhere in the hotel that the public can potentially come and participate with you. So just some things to keep in mind. And again, these rules were not made to deal with COVID, which is why they're the way they are. So, okay, moving on to this slide, AB 2449. So remote attendance, these were made with COVID in mind. And so AB 2449 itself has two different pathways of participating remotely. And if you can meet either one of these pathways, it means you can attend virtually without making wherever you are into a public meeting space. You just get to attend online from wherever you are. You don't have to say where you are or let the public in or post the agenda on your door or put the address of where you are on the agenda. You don't do any of that. You just get to show up virtually. So there's two pathways. So number one is just cause, which is basically I have a contagious illness or I have a caregiving need of a family member. Or it could be an unaccommodated disability related need or travel while on business, official business of a state or local agency. So to this group, the most applicable reasons would be you have a contagious illness or you have a caregiving need of a family member, whether that's a child or even an adult, right? So if you have one of those reasons, that's called just cause. If you have any other general physical or family medical emergency, that's what's called emergency circumstances. And the difference is there are some procedural differences, which we can go to the next slide and I'll explain what the difference is. Okay. So you can see this chart, which compares just cause on the left and emergency circumstances on the right. So under just cause, if you meet A, B, C, or D, in order to invoke this procedure, you just have to give notice to the body including up to the start of the meeting. So you don't need to know, say, in advance of the agenda publishing. You show up virtually at the meeting and you say, I'm giving notice that I need to appear virtually under just cause because you give a very general reason, like I have a contagious illness or I have a childcare need, You don't need to say my doctor diagnosed me as, COVID-19, this kind of variant, no one wants to know and no one cares, right? And that's not required under the law to give such detailed information. It's emergency circumstances. The commissioner, who wants to appear virtually, has to actually request that the body give you permission to appear virtually. And the commission then asks you for a very general description again. And the law actually says, kind of more than 20 words is fine. And they have to take action, which means vote to approve you attending virtually. So I don't know why the legislature felt like they need to have this difference, but that's what the law says. So, okay. So again, just cause.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
can I you just lost me
Okay,
for a
yeah.
second. Sorry. I know you want to ask a question too. Do you want to go back? Okay. I don't know. Can you?
Yeah,
there's
we can go
something
back.
that confused me
Uh-huh.
there. And I don't really understand what just confused me, but with I got the just cause,
Mhm.
and then right after that you said something and it completely like went over my head. Do you remember what that?
So just cause, if you meet any of those conditions, A, B, C, or D,
Right.
way to invoke appearing virtually is all you have to do is give notice, which means you just declare, I have meet one of these conditions, and therefore I'm going to participate virtually today, assuming every other requirement's met. So you just tell the commission that's what you're doing. You're not asking permission.
Okay.
But under emergency circumstances, if that's the category you fit into, physical or family medical emergency, you actually have to request that the body give you permission for you to participate virtually. So they vote and say, I move that we allow Tim Shizu to participate virtually today because he has a physical or family medical emergency. And then the rest of the board or the commission will vote and say yes, hopefully, and then you can participate virtually.
Okay. I guess it sounds kind of like a lot of it is could be a just cause. So that's why I think it's throwing me off for a second.
Another thing that I don't quite understand what the legislature was thinking when they created these two different categories. I guess there is some distinction between, say, a contagious illness versus a physical or family medical emergency.
Yeah. So when I read this, I'm kind of thinking, if I fell and broke my hand,
Mhm.
I won't be able to invoke just cause because that's not a contagious illness
Mhm.
personally, but it's a physical medical emergency.
Yeah, it may even be C, a need related to a physical or mental disability.
Oh, I
That's
see.
what I was
Okay.
thinking too.
So it's, the more flexible way is just cause. It requires less process.
Yeah.
If you can fit into that, that's great. If you can't, there's still emergency circumstances that is there for you. Okay. So this is just to summarize what I just said. Again, just cause, there's no action required from the commission. You just let them know that's what you're doing. Okay, next slide. And again, just to summarize, if you fall into the emergency circumstances situation, the commission actually has to approve it. And the commission can still approve this even if it's not on the agenda. So, it's an emergency, right? You didn't know 72 hours in advance that you were having an emergency. So you come virtually, and at the very top of the meeting, you let the chair or whoever is leading the meeting know that they need to decide on this first so that you can participate in the rest of the meeting.
Wait, so in just cause, the timing is right before the meeting, right? Up to right before the meeting. So I
Yes.
call you Lisa and say, hey, I'm having a childcare
Mhm.
need.
Yeah, or I have COVID or I think I have COVID.
Okay.
Yeah. They go,
And then,
okay.
and then she said, okay, and then I can just log in.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
okay.
you would declare at the very top of the meeting,
Mhm.
I'm appearing virtually today because of
Of
just
just
cause.
cause.
Yeah, and they go, okay, great. Like,
Got it.
yeah.
Helpful.
Okay, next slide. So again, comparison, this is the same chart. And again, all of this is significant because if you can invoke one of these, you don't have to do the whole let someone in your house procedure. Because obviously if you have a contagious illness, you don't want them to be there, right? Yeah. Okay, so a few other important things to consider. So one of the big ones is that if someone appears virtually under either of these, at least a quorum of the members must still attend from a singular in-person location still. So not all of you can invoke this at the same time. So it's really important to let staff know as soon as you can, because they have to think about whether you can still have the meeting. Because if too many people either are absent or want to use AB 2449, only, there's a limit practically, right? So just keep that in mind. Another thing is that if someone attending under AB 2449 has to disclose whether there's another person in the room who's over 18. And their general relationship with them. So, you would say, I'm appearing because of just cause. And in the room with me, there's no one. Or in the room with me is my spouse, whoever, right? And then if you're going to appear virtually, you have to appear with both audio and visual technology. Okay, so these additional requirements have to do with more about how the public interacts with the commission when there's a virtual attendee. So these are basically things you're already doing. So the agenda has to indicate how the public can access the meeting and offer comments. So usually, by call-in, by Zoom, or coming in person. And like always, you can't require public comments to be submitted only in advance. Comments must be still accepted in real time. So, during your regular public comment sessions. And of course, if the broadcasting is disrupted online, you must pause and wait until your connection is restored. Okay. And then the next most important thing about AB 2449 is that you can only use it 2 times a year. So it's an arbitrary limit the legislature has set. What you're supposed to do if you have COVID more than once, say in a year, I don't know, but it's twice a year. So your staff liaison will have to help you keep track of how many times you do it. And it's a calendar year. It's not like a rolling 12 months or anything. It's just per calendar year. Okay, so here's an emergency script if you do have to use the emergency circumstances rule under 2449. I won't read it out loud, but it's there for you in case you need it. We'll hand this out to your staff liaison just so that she can give it to you in case you ever need it. So again, it's really important to inform your staff liaison if you even think you might need to appear virtually, just so that they can make sure a quorum is still available to appear in person. And to confirm your eligibility in general, if you have any questions. And again, or if they need to consult with me, for example, probably not, but just in case. Yeah, so I think next slide. That's it. Any question? I know that was a really quick quick review of what we went over. My colleague Jen and Molly Stump went over earlier at Board and Commission training in January. So if this sounds familiar, because it's the same. So any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions, thoughts?
No, but thank you so much for the clear explanation.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Tim, I think, did you help facilitate any of the other boards and commissions because I know we're supposed to adopt an attendance policy. Can you maybe give the commissioners some more guidelines on what we're doing now?
Yeah, so if you go, actually, can we go on the slides again to standard remote attendance? So I think it's slide number 5. If we can, it's not that important. But anyway, so as I said, so under AB 2449, you can invoke that twice per calendar year. But under what I'm calling standard remote attendance, where you do make wherever you are into basically a public meeting place, there is no limit on how many times a year you can use that, at least under the Brown Act, the state law itself. Council has asked the commissions if they want to, they can impose some limit on how many times a commissioner can use that per year. Although I think virtually every other commission has declined to impose any rules on that. But it's an option if this commission would like to. If they would like to do that today, they could. If they decide they don't want to, that's fine too. Or if they would like to agendize it to discuss another day, of course, that's another option. But again, it's something I think basically every other commission has declined to impose any additional rules on themselves.
We have to take it. Do we have to take an action on that? Meaning the action to decline or to impose?
I would say that if you would like to decline, it's probably best to take an action just to confirm that's everyone's in agreement.
Okay.
Just to say that we decline to the suggested motion would be moved to not impose any additional rule this time.
I move to not impose any additional restriction on this remote attendance policy.
Second,
Okay, roll call. Commissioner Shen,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
yes.
and Chair Taylor, yes.
Great. Oh, I think. Is there any public comment on this item? I guess we haven't done that yet. Just-
I see no raised hands at this
Okay,
point.
so that's fine. Yeah. Okay, great. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, next we have California Avenue Murals event.
Yes, so we had our open call for walls and we have 2 places confirmed. We have a third we're talking to. So the ask this evening, we're going to show you a couple of images of the wall locations that we have permission secured so far. The recommendation is that the commission go ahead and approve funding in the amount of up to $40,000 to paint murals in potentially 3 locations on the California Avenue district. We have muralists that we're culling down the list and we're going to go through a selection panel process. And we hope to return in March with recommendations pairing muralists with specific sites for your approval. So the first site we've secured permission for, actually both of the sites we're going to show you this evening are places where we had permission to do temporary murals previously. So this is the site of Izzy's Bagels, right at the entrance to California Avenue. It actually does have quite a bit of visibility. Lots of people cut through there to the parking and linger at the farmer's market and stand in lines to get bagels. So that's a great wall. And then this one is down by the fountain near the Caltrain where Carrie Letter's temporary mural was. And the board there is really excited about having something bright and colorful and big right there on that wall that's visible from the train and as people come through the tunnel. So those are the 2 walls we have secured. And we're hopeful we will get another one. So we wanted to go ahead and allocate the funds up to $40,000 so that we have some room to engage another artist to bring back to you for approval next month.
Thank you. Any questions, thoughts, comments?
Can you give a rough breakdown of how we arrive at this $40,000 number?
It's a pretty standard square footage. So we went out there, we took measurements of if it was a rectangular presentation on that wall with that square footage, you know, at $50 a square foot, because they're doing the wall prep, they're doing everything that is within best practices.
And you had mentioned that it's potentially 3 murals. Is that 3 murals in total based on the square footage?
Yes,
Thank you.
of course.
So I have a question about kind of the long-term
Mhm.
element of this. So once the murals are placed, is there a longevity period or is it just kind of, if it lasts for a long time, it lasts for a long time? You know, we know all about murals right now in terms of longevity and issues with, you know, walls having damage and things like that after the fact. So yes.
Great.
that's
So
fair.
you may recall when we came to the commission previously to get approval to launch this, and we were hoping to have more walls, so it would be more of a festival. Maybe we back off using festival, but murals event. We had talked about the fact that the life expectation for these would be 5 years, and that would be part of the agreement, which Tim is working with us on, because they are on private property. So we would maintain it for 5 years. After that time, the property owner would have permission to either paint over it, maintain the mural themselves, or potentially apply for funding for a new mural. So it leaves it open after that 5-year mark, and that would be in the initial agreement.
Got it. And the initial agreement, would the artist also sign off? Because
Yes. Absolutely. It needs to be made clear upfront that these are not coming into the city's permanent collection, and that this is a long-term temporary project.
great.
Mhm.
I have another question, but Ben, do you have a question before I ask mine? Or-
No, other than I think this is a great project and look forward to those murals going up on those walls.
Thanks, Ben. I agree. It's also very exciting. No, I just have another question about, we don't have a lot of issues, I think, in the city with graffiti, but I was just curious. I'm sure the walls are gonna be sealed in some form, but if there's any graffiti issues, I know Nadia's the graffiti cleaner pro. She's been out there supposedly cleaning other places. So is that something that you guys will just take care of, and we don't need to ask for additional funds, or is that part of the?
No, that's the way we
process?
manage it now. We find typically that sometimes having a graffiti coating on top causes more problems than it's worth. So we'll navigate that with the artist when the time comes. Sometimes the graffiti coating makes it harder to do touch-ups. So for instance, in the mural, when we've had some tagging, by not having that sealed, it makes it a little easier for the artist to come in and do touch-ups and for us to remove it. Mhm.
And one more question with the touch-ups,
Mhm.
is that part of their contract, like a certain?
Well,
or
that
is
would
you
become
come
part of our
back?
maintenance,
Okay, okay.
as with any other project that we have. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Okay,
I have a question about the anti-graffiti coating. If you don't put the graffiti coating on it, that will cut down on the cost, I take it, of the overall mural.
Yes, and considering that these are intended to have a 5-year lifespan, putting that coating on also makes it really difficult for the property owner to take next steps if they want to paint over it or do something else.
I move to approve the funding in the amount of up to $40,000 to paint murals in the California Avenue district.
Second,
okay, roll call, Commissioner Shen,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
yes.
and Chair Taylor, yes. Okay, collection care.
Excellent. So for this one, we're going to turn it over to Nadia. This is a collection, care, and maintenance item for Birdie, which is out at the Palo Alto Golf Links course. So if you'll bear with us just a second, get the slides up.
Multitasking. Mhm. Okay. So today we're requesting funding from the maintenance fund in the amount of up to $6,000 for Birdie by Oakland-based artist Joyce Sue. Project is located at the Palo Alto Municipal Golf Course link. So just to provide you with a little bit of background for this project, so Birdie by artist Joyce Sue was commissioned. The artist was commissioned in, I believe, 2015, and the project was fabricated and installed 2017 as part of the redevelopment of the municipal golf course. The sculpture is made out of mild steel, then powder coated, welded, and the powder coated and is installed on top of the T, also made of aluminum, I believe. So, with as part of the care package, I guess, for all of the permanently sighted artworks, we do regular checkups, condition reports, and pretty soon after the installation, we noticed that some areas with the mild steel tubing, even though powder coated, were showing some seeping and rusted areas. So we continue to monitor the piece. We communicated our observations with the artists over the years. And I guess by year 2022, when we did a more detailed condition reporting, we noticed a few issues with the piece, and I will walk you through those. Okay, let me just move this a little bit here. Okay. So yeah, so I highlighted some of the most egregious, I guess, areas of concern. So you will see that the piece is showing visible rust throughout the structure, but the area of most concern is that base of the body, which is mounted, bolted into the T. So rust just makes metal more vulnerable. So we really need to get there and clean up and make sure it's stabilized and prevent this condition in the future. Another issue that we observed shortly after the installation, even though the warranty was given to us for the brightness and quality of the painting, the powder coating would remain just as bright for at least 10 years. Shortly we noticed some fading, and so right now it's pretty evident, especially the areas that are sky-facing surfaces. They're pretty milky and don't have that luster and brightness that the colors showed in the beginning. And I highlighted some of the areas in the flaps, also just some corrosion and rust and evident. So with all those observations, we brought out a team of art fabricators from Oakland. So they observed, the piece and agreed with the findings of the conservators that it's better to address the issues now. So we determined the plan of action. The piece will be taken off-site to the fabricator's workshop, shop, and completely stripped off the layer of powder-coated paint. Then it will be cleaned and treated to prevent just stabilize any rusting. It will be powder coated again with the same type and code for the color, and then it will be brought back and installed on site. So that's the plan, and that scope will be $6,000. So that's the amount we're requesting today.
3 questions. First one, you mentioned that before the installation, we were told that the color will maintain for 10 years. So is there some type of warranty?
So we're beyond the warranty period at this point. We think that multiple factors that may play into this outcome. The condition of the steel underneath might be compromising the look of the paint on the surface. It's always in the sun, so it's getting a lot of sunshine. Also, the sculpture is located pretty close to the base, so the air is a little salty compared than what it is even like a sort of main area of Palo Alto. So the conditions, all these factors, they play a role. So our hopes with stabilizing the rusting is the main area of concern that we need to address. And then we hope that with that, the paint will withstand the estimated lifespan that it was first provided to us.
Got it. And so, second question, who will be doing the repair?
Yes, so it's an Oakland-based art and design set fabricator. They have really established portfolio of projects for like sculpture in fabrication, installation, refurbishment. So their team members were on site. earlier last month to take a look at the sculpture and provide that scope based on the observations.
Is there a reason why the original artist Joy Sue is not involved in the?
Yeah, so when we reached out to the artist, she she doesn't fabricate herself.
I
So
see.
so she was working with a fabricator from Sacramento to create the piece. So it was her recommendation that we reach out to a number of fabricators, and we were working with the fabricators on her list.
Got it. And hopefully last question.
Sure.
You mentioned that the color will be restored to the original, knowing that this type of paint under this condition, has not aged well, against the expected
Mhm.
time of the original investment. Is there any reason why we're not changing maybe the type of paint or whatever the protection mechanism is,
Mhm.
so that it could be better protected against the natural conditions of the environment?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we'll be definitely working closely with the fabricators to discuss possibilities. So we were able to provide the specs, like color codes for the paint. So we determined that we'll be able to recreate exactly the same color, but it's possible that we might go with a different brand. I mean, we'll go with the best recommendations of the fabricator.
If I may offer also, this is a conversation, of course, that takes place across everyone who's managing public art collections. And the specs that we generally get say, oh, it's going to be great for 10 years. It never hits the promised amount. The reality is that the sun here in California is very, very bright. It is sunny a lot. And this piece, of course, is, as Nadia mentioned, near the Baylands. So it does have a number of things at play there. So we are hopeful that once we get rid of the corrosion, that it will cease to bloom once it's sealed under a new powder coating.
You bring up a good point, which is if they're giving you a life expectancy for the artwork, maybe if it's an artist that's used to working in a different environment with different sun exposure versus California, we have to discount that time period. So if we have to discount that time period, does it mean when we're budgeting for all of our projects that we discount the time and therefore build in additional budget for maintenance?
That's an excellent point. We do tend to estimate that it will be maybe 75% of what they tell us. So as we're marking out upcoming years and upcoming maintenance, we know Albuquerque will need to be repainted probably every 7 years. And that, so we do have these estimates on our radar. Another important piece to think about is there are some older sculptures that have really held their paint. Those are paints that are they're not allowed to be used in California. So because of the strict environmental laws in place as well, we can't use some of the products that they use in other states.
Guess one more question. You had mentioned that some of the issues may have to do with the underlying steel. So the fact that we're fixing we're repainting it, we're stripping and repainting, is this going to fix the issue that stem from the steel underneath?
That's the hope, and we've had this luck before. We've had other projects where the metal has bloomed, where there were contaminants in the welding or something in the process. But generally, yes, if you're able to grind it down to get to clean steel, and you can recoat it and prevent it from reblooming, or at least really slow it down and make it much smaller.
Thank you. You've answered all my questions.
I have a question about the piece, and at least thank you for clearing up the part about the paint and the length of time and paint and that sort of stuff. So that's a question I had, but you cleared that up. Once the piece is taken off, and if there's corrosion or rust on the T, well, how will that be handled?
Well, the T is aluminum, so it's a different material.
okay.
When we take the birdie off the T, we'll cap the top of it, make sure it's, you know, water sealed and
Mhm.
post appropriate signage. So we'll make sure that the tea is, you know, safe and sound and, you know, cleaned up and inspected, ready to accept the birdie when she's ready to return.
And how long is the repair expected to take?
Yeah, so we estimate between 2 and 4 weeks, depending on the availability of the powder coaters. So since there are like 2 major steps in this refurbishment process, but you know, we spoke with the team and they understand the timeline and just our desire to bring the sculpture back as soon as possible. So
Okay, that's good to know that there'll be a short time of no birdies at the golf course.
yeah,
That's
I
good to
will give
know.
it a month, just to
Okay.
make sure that the sculpture is properly treated for corrosion, and then we don't rush the powder
Right.
coating.
We can leave a
Right.
note that she's flown south for the winter.
Yeah,
Migration, yes, this migration.
yeah, let the golfers know there's no birdies on the course at the time.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any, well, some of my questions did get answered, but this is just part of life, collection care. So,
Oh yeah, and I don't see any public comments, any raised hands, so thank you.
great.
Hey, I move that we allocate an amount up to $6,000 to repair birdie at the golf course.
And I will second that. So now roll call, Commissioner Shen,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
Yes.
and Chair Taylor, yes. Okay, and last but not least, we have non-action items. Code art.
So we're really excited to share with you a little update on the urban interventions. The last meeting, you all got to see and approve the anchor artwork. So tonight we are able to share the final urban intervention teams that are working on their concepts. So we do have a little bit of eye candy for you, but keep in mind, these are initial concepts that already are evolving as we're working with these teams on their design development. So just as a quick reminder for anyone who may be watching this later about Code Art, the dates are October 12th through 14th from 5 to 10 p.m. So starting early enough that families with young children can come participate, and staying up late enough so that that nighttime presence can really shine in downtown Palo Alto. So we're taking advantage of interesting sites throughout downtown, as we have the last 2 times we've done this. Artworks really are supposed to invite interaction and play, spark curiosity, have a nighttime presence, and as we mentioned earlier, like really animate these spaces in a different way. So we had 32 submitted applications for the interventions. I'm not going to read through the selection panel, but we had an amazing selection panel. And there was lots of fabulous discussion about these concepts and what it might mean for the event in downtown Palo Alto. So these are the criteria that they used when they ranked all of these projects. And so this is the list. So we have River of Shadows by Corey Barr and Paul Mans. Corey was one of the urban intervention teams last year. Monoliths by Newhouse. Interactive Field Flows by Stephen Wallace. Bureau of Cloud Management by Tong Wu. Ripple by Jeffrey Yip. Yip is also another artist who participated previously. And Intersection by Roken Hay. And she lives right by downtown. She's a Palo Alto resident as well. So this was the initial concept rendering for River of Shadows. And the idea is that as someone approaches, you would see your real-time shadow. And then that shadow would continue to move and perhaps change color. And so as new people arrived, your shadow would continue to move, and then more recent ones would come in until you eventually fade out. Originally, this was imagined for Lane 20, the tunnel site that was previously used. They have now shifted to wanting a more horizontal presentation, more in keeping with the inspiration of the project, the Muybridge Running Horse, which apparently has some history right here at Stanford. So this idea that it becomes this ongoing record of people who interacted with the piece. So Monoliths by Newhouse. So two of these enormous inflatable projects will be, we believe, anchoring Lytton Plaza this time. And they've traveled all over the place. And so we're going to have, I think, the spiral in the front and the globe in the middle, but we've discussed a few potential options. So Stephen Wallace, he's going to do an interactive field flow project. So again, this is ideation. So the top two are visuals that he created. The bottom is not his visual, but it is more aligned with what he's thinking that he's going to create for us. So we'll take the presentation of several screens that as you move in front of the screen, the field flows will interact with your presence. Bureau of Cloud Management. This is a really interesting project in which people are invited to submit text describing a cloud, and the Bureau of Cloud Management will create that cloud. So it will be set up like a laboratory, but it will be outdoors. And so stay tuned for more details on that. And then this is Jeffrey Yip's project in which sound stimulates ripples of waves in this water table. There's a light component, and we're working with him on what more of the interaction of that project will be. But it's a very meditative kind of look and feel to it. And that's all we have for visuals. There is one other project that was selected that we don't have a sketch for. She didn't actually submit sketches, but a written description. So we've been working with her already on prototyping to make sure that her project will be feasible. We are looking to site hers in Bell's Alley, and essentially it would be, imagine almost like an apothecary or something there, where you have bottles with some with lights and some with objects and some with sound that people can really explore. And so it's nature sort of blooming from this alley, which is noticeably absent of nature. So that is what we have in store for the urban interventions for Coder.
So very exciting. Just question about the cloud. Would it be too dark to see the cloud?
No, they're going to be on large monitors. Originally, they wanted to do them as projections, but that's not going to be feasible within their budget. So we've pivoted, and it will have a very much of a laboratory feel.
Yeah, that's a project that uses AI, artificial intelligence. So it's going to be really fun to play with it. And I'm sure they're going to have a lot of fans and interested people in the audience.
AI art, Palo Alto, just made in heaven.
Any other questions?
Well, at some point, I'm assuming we'll have a discussion about like promotion and things like that, or is that something internally that you guys are just handling? Because my only, I was just walking outside today downtown and it felt very quiet. I don't know. Usually when I think of Thursdays, I think of like more people out, but maybe it's just the weather, who knows? But definitely having the city as a city, not just the Public Art Commission as a component of the city, but how to get them more involved in promoting it. So.
Absolutely. I can tell you that our liaison on the 7th floor who oversees economic development is very excited about seeing this promoted and really bringing a lot of people downtown. Another interesting thing to keep in mind is that the last time we did the festival, a lot of the restaurants and the businesses were really struggling with staffing, and there were a lot of moving pieces as far as the outdoor seating and permitting. And so they really didn't have the bandwidth to turn time and attention toward this. And I think this time around, they probably will. So I think that's all going to go in our favor.
And there are no street closures, just like on because last time there's one on University, but we're not doing one on University, right? This time?
You're trying to get me in trouble.
I know.
No, there are no street closures planned for University, but we are talking about some other side areas just off of University as potential sites for projects, but nothing is set in stone yet. So we have to go through a lot of different approvals.
So in terms of location and size access, it would be more comparable to the first time.
Perhaps I think everything is going to be drawn in a little bit more, because as far as the way things are shaping up currently, we're probably not going to use the AT&T lot, so we won't have that one further out. And we may not be using the Lane 20 tunnel, but maybe adjacent to it between University and the Lane 20 tunnel. So the project would be visible from University.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Actually, one more question. Chair Taylor, you were on the panel. Do you love to hear what your experience was from being on the selection panel?
Thank you for asking. I will say these are always quite challenging to me. Only because I think some of them are very difficult for me to actually understand what they'd be like in reality. So I just kind of went with my gut and was like, okay, this sounds interesting. I could see it being realistic to implement. But this AI stuff, it's great. It's exciting, but it's over my head at the time with the tech aspect. But you have to take a chance. And it was fun being around other people who had this experience of the tech. And it's always a challenge going up in the Bay Area prior to the big tech boom, as they call it. And I appreciate tech, but there's a part of me that's so inclined to like the 2D part. So it's like, and the 3D, but not the tech part. So it's like, just keep grasping my head around it and understanding it more. But I think it's exciting. And I think it draws different types of people out, and I'm excited to see it. Yeah.
One thing I do appreciate is I can imagine how difficult it is to visualize, but then being able to see the eye candy and then to have the voiceover, I'm like, oh, okay, I can now appreciate it a little bit more. But I think maybe at the stage of selection that you engage in, I mean, that's still very much the shaping of ideas, and these are complicated projects. And I'm so proud that we're able to bring them, particularly where we are, sort of the population. I think this is a population that would really appreciate it.
And I think too, just to expand on that, I think there are a lot of individuals, myself included, that you know what you're thinking, but you can't always express through verbiage. How you want to implement what you're thinking. And so I think that's a big challenge. I do, if I'm not misrepresenting my brain right now, I don't know if we talked about this, but one of the other things too is like long term, we've had 2 really successful code arts, and then it's like, okay, how do can you outdo, what does outdoing yourself mean? And will there be a shift or anything? So it'll be interesting to see now after 3 cycles, what it all looks like and how people interact with it. So that will be exciting. I don't know from a staff point, you want to, but we don't have to go into detail because
it's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure, but it's exciting to see because now we kind of have an idea of what people are capable of, and then, what could happen in the future. Who knows?
One of the things I'm really excited about is, in addition to people participating, coming on site, because so many of these just feel so cerebral and feel to be, a project of almost first impression, like first undertaking. I think it will resonate beyond. It will have, people would talk about it. I think this will get written up, and maybe in different ways. Not that this was the goal, but I think it would really highlight how rich we are in Palo Alto in terms of artwork.
You know, you just made me think of something too, Sania, that I don't know if the cloud, is it building of cloud management?
Yeah.
How are they planning to get people to write the text?
They will be interacting with the public as they approach. And so we're developing that if it's a tablet or if people are engaging with their phone or what that looks like.
Okay, because I was just gonna say that one of the things I'm actually really pleased about is none of these so far, at least in the initial phases, had any phone requirements. And I think that's something interesting and personally special of people interacting with technology, but not using their phones to interact with the technology. So I don't know if that's something with the cloud management, I think it would be kind of fun if it was something that you didn't have to use a device to actually partake in it. And there are people, I mean, my grandparents sadly passed on, but they didn't have any of this, tech device, and not everybody does. And it's kind of nice to have it tech, but not be always like so focused on your phones. And there's something to be said, I think, about interacting and not taking photos of you interacting, but people will. I mean, that's just part of life.
That's a good point, actually. Like in terms of accessibility, whatever the considerations are, make sure that all age group would have access to participating would be great.
Ben, do you want to share any thoughts before we close up shop tonight?
Not really. I think you've covered it all, but I just want to say I'm really looking forward to court art and once again to enliven the downtown area.
Right. Okay. I think we're good. There's no more public comments. Any commissioner sharing anything coming up that you guys want to mention? Or I know actually I'm gonna put Ben on the spot. I didn't get to see it, but at San Jose, there's an interesting, I heard, public art installation. Do you want to briefly talk about it? I don't know if you saw it, Ben. I just know you're connected.
Are you speaking about the Man of Fire that was brought up at our last meeting?
I wasn't at the last meeting, so I don't
Okay.
recall, but potentially, so I apologize.
Okay, well, the Man of Fire, what Jennifer Eason was referring to is a piece about Dr. Ernesto Galarza, who was the first Hispanic or Latinx professor in the United States at San Jose State. And there's a table down by the Fairmont Hotel, between the Fairmont Hotel and in that alleyway there, right by Plaza Park, or Chavez Park, that was called. And it's a table, and it describes what he did in the community. And then from that table, there's swooshes in the ground that between that table and San Jose State, which starts on 4th Street. And those swooshes are both in English and in Spanish. And those are words from Ernest Galarza. And that's what one of the thoughts was about the public art piece that's going in, that Jennifer was talking, was going into the Fry's, possibly one of the pieces they could do at the Fry's site now.
Thanks, Ben. I thought there was also a light one, but maybe that's the same and I'm just reading it. But anyway, I'll look it up and I can share it later. Okay, anybody else? No? Wonderful. Well, thank you, Ben. I always like hearing your thoughts about San Jose. And we will adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How was it this week?